What's up, everybody, for another movie review? Continuing on with the July theme month, I will be doing two videos back to back on Jean-Claude Van Damme's films. The first Universal Soldier film, and then a separate video on Universal Soldier: The Return. And uh, before we get into it, please do me a favor, like this video, hit it with a thumbs up, uh, leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think, share this with your friends, and follow me in the links in the description below. And man, get right to it, man. It's one of those classic action films. It's like, there's certain action films, it's like a guy's guy type of film, because sometimes guys, it's like watching crap blow up and, you know, action fight scenes and stuff like that. It gets the testosterone going. We just engage in that kind of thing. And Universal Soldier, uh, at least in my opinion, the first one, because they've been making like at least quite a handful of stuff in the latter half of the 2000s, and from what I understand, does not hold up at all. It's very direct to DVD kind of stuff. But the first Universal Soldier definitely hit the nostalgia feels. It's like a fun action summer blockbuster type of thing, and actually did come out in July 1992. It's directed by Roland Emmerich. Of course, stars Jean-Claude Van Damme as Luke Devereaux, Dolph Lundgren as Sergeant Andrew Scott. I just love the way he pronounces his, because I think for a long time we kind of slept on Dolph Lundgren as a legit actor. I mean, he's been getting his flowers for I think ever since the first Expendables film. I think people are starting to like, oh wow, this dude got some range to him. He's been showing up bits and pieces here and there, especially from the Creed films, but he is good in this. We all remember him as Ivan Drago, and that's his iconic role of all time. And some people don't remember this, but he also played the Punisher in the 1980s. Not, I won't say critically acclaimed, but it's just like, I don't know, it didn't stand out as much as the 2004's Thomas Jane's Punisher did. Or even like the TV show Punisher did very, not recently, but that was on Netflix a while back with John Bernthal. But it's just the way he just delivered his lines. It's like uniquely tailored to him. It's like, my name is Sergeant Andrew Scott. It's like, I don't know. He is like a big dude and just intimidating, and he just turns that on. He makes a great villain. Ali Walker as Veronica Roberts, Edo Ross as Colonel Perry, Leon Rippey as Woodward, Tika Wells as Garth. So we're beginning the movie in 1969 during the Vietnam War, and we see Luke Devereaux and a couple of troops are on the trail to find their sergeant, and they come across, well, at least a couple of them end up getting like ambushed or hurt by Vietnamese traps and stuff like that, and bombs are going off. It's a literal war zone. So Luke Devereaux is like the only one left that's walking in this village and seeing not only dead bodies of Vietnamese civilians, but also U.S. troops. And so as he's carefully walking, because he knows a couple of them have missing ears, and you come across this hut where you see a bound Vietnamese couple and his sergeant making like a ear necklace, and he clearly lost it. Like, Vietnam is probably one of the most psychologically traumatic experience for a lot of soldiers of that era, and you see that fully displayed. I think, we go through the history books about that kind of stuff. I think Dolph Lundgren played it very well. Like, this dude clearly snapped, and I imagine if you talk to Vietnamese veterans, they can explain that, yeah, there was a lot of dudes probably snapped, at the experience, especially because uh I think the Vietnamese traps was like the most, harrowing experience ever in warfare, because you don't know what could be a trap or a pitfall or a spike, trap. Something, seemed like nothing turns out to be this massive trap, and tunnels being built underground and things of that nature. So the Vietnamese can always be anywhere and everywhere, and this could affect a lot of soldiers' mind, because it's not something they experienced in warfare before, which puts the Vietnamese as the one rare place in the U.S. that really has not been conquered. And, like, besides the U.S., there's plenty of other countries that try to invade Vietnam or try to take it over, but the Vietnamese are just superior in defending their land. It's just like unprecedented, and the only other country that managed to pull that off is the Iraq area, for the Middle East. It's like they know their lands, they know their territory, they use it to very to a very effective way. So, I highly encourage you guys, like, look up documentaries, or read some books, or talk to some Vietnamese war vets, and get firsthand knowledge about the experience and stuff like that. You can learn something. But anyway, Luke tries to de-escalate the whole situation, tries to, like, calm the situation down, because he is, soon to be, deployed to go back home. Because that's all he wanted to do. He's ready, like, he's done with his tour. He's had enough of it. Like, clearly, it's reaching the psychological toll on him, but not to the degree where he sees his sergeant, going off the deep end. He's trying to calm things down. Clearly, these dudes were friends. But Scott sees enemy everywhere, and he sees, like, not only enemy but traitors. He sees, like, he took down his own squad because he sees them as traitors, because they wouldn't go along with what he is ordering them to do. So he ends up killing the male hostage, while Luke pushes Scott away and tries to run away with the surviving girl. But Scott shoots Devil in the leg, and he screams to the girl to run. Scott throws a hand grenade and just blows up the girl. And I miss classic action movies like this, where they're not scared to show. And I know there's certain ratings you can't show to certain people. We kind of evolve over time since the 90s when it comes to, like, action films. But I just kind of miss the fact that, like, yeah, we see this girl's like, limbs blown off. It's like she's literally on the ground with limbs blown off. And Luke is just disgusted. So he gets into it with Scott, and they end up shooting each other to death. The next day, uh, U.S. Reinforcements come by and see this entire horrific tragedy and decide to cover it all up. And when the superior officers there gets word to like put uh, Luke and Scott on ice, bag them up, put them on ice, and declare them missing in action. Which I wouldn't say the government wouldn't do that, but like the thing, like, okay, there should have been like a few questions, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that the U.S. Military probably do that is off the books that would be deemed highly unorthodox, borderline illegal, but we don't know. So I can't really say whether or not this would have been permitted, but also given the fact that the time period we're talking about here and in a state of unrest, the U.S. was involved in, which it was technically on them. They was trying to invade a country. It's kind of like messed up on the U.S. part. But in any case, they was like, cutting a lot of corners and doing a lot of stuff that probably wasn't cool. And it's kind of funny. I can't help but think about Forrest Gump. It's like, man, Forrest could be somewhere getting his, shot in the buttocks while Luke Devereaux is like getting shot to death by his own sergeant. It's kind of wild. Because they both were involved in Vietnam. Anyway, so time goes by, and it's 1992, and we see like a hostage situation at the Hoover Dam, and this military guy, Colonel Perry, is bringing out his elite unit called the Unisols, short for Universal Soldiers. And we see not only Luke and Scott, but we also see Debo there. I forgot Debo was like this Unisol thing, but I don't think he had like a speaking role. Not one word. But it's kind of funny. Like, oh, wow. It's fun to see him. It's always fun to see Debo and stuff outside of Friday. But we see these elite soldiers strategically and effectively take down these terrorists and high precision, fast rate, because for some reason like SWAT couldn't do anything about this particular situation. It's effective SWAT should be, but I guess it's the difference between like police personnel, because technically they are, even though they're elite police personnel, they're still police, so they got certain rules and certain ways to go about, where a U.S. military unit goes about in a uniquely different way that would make them superior by comparison. But I don't know. I can totally see like SWAT almost doing the exact same freaking thing. But irregardless, the Unisols take down these hostage takers. Then you see Luke looks at because these guys are just completely like mindless kind of drones. He is taking orders via these comm links, and it's so uniquely like Universal Soldier. Like you see the look of this with the eyepiece and like that spyware type of gadget. Your mind immediately goes to like a Universal Soldier type of feel to it. But Luke sees these two Asian hostages, and his mind immediately just reverts back. His memory reverts back to those hostages at Vietnam, and he just pauses and doesn't listen to the orders coming from the colonel. So they think like something must be wrong. Uh, uh, but then he stares at, you know, Scott, and it's like, you know, the look of like, you know, shock on his face, but doesn't know what to do with it. But then we meet this reporter, Veronica, who, for some reason, not very Lois Lane of her, shows up late to her assignment where she's supposed to be covering this Hoover Dam hostage situation. And even though they say it, but it doesn't really prove anything, how like she's good at her job and break, you know, all these cool stories and stuff like that. But she gets fired on the spot, even though you probably should have waited until she gets back. Because who are you, the guy like in the field? I don't think that's her boss per se, but it's just like, okay, she clearly got all this equipment and this cameraman and all this other stuff, and you're firing her because she's late. How many times has he really been late? Should she just be suspended? Because it's like, you know, like that seemed like the most that the punishment she should have gotten for arriving to an assignment late. This shouldn't be like an immediate fireable offense. And even if it was, shouldn't you wait until she get back in office to speak with her editor-in-chief about this? Who are you, guy? But she freely goes about her business, thinking like, oh, I can get my job back if I break this story about who these guys are. This, you know, weird, unique, elite, you know, combat soldiers. So I'm gonna crack this, and it's like, man, I don't think you are really good at your job. You seem like you're chasing the story rather than like, I know you're supposed to chase the story, but I don't know. In terms of like, even April O'Neil knows better how to be a reporter more so than you, in my opinion. Because who shows up to a thing late and you want to get ahead of the story? Well, you got to pick up your pack of smokes before you got on the job or something? Anyway, so she ends up following the colonel. And she follows him to this secret location. And you see one of the soldiers who got wounded during the hostage situation is putting this, you know, iron or steel coffin-like thing that's filled with ice. And she knows that the guy is still alive somehow, even though he's supposed to be riddled with bullets. They get busted, and the colonel orders Luke, Scott, and the other unisols to, capture them and ask for the film so they can destroy it, because they don't want, because this is a secret thing. They don't want the Pentagon to know yet what they're doing, because it's pretty off the books until like, they have like a proven track record, I imagine, so that way they can offer a rebuttal in case like, hey, you can't do this, because it turns out these unisols are revived former soldiers. Kind of wish we get a little bit more, because clearly we know Luke and Scott were from the Vietnam War, but are the other soldiers from Vietnam or from other various conflicts from various wars? Because that would be very cool, because like, as you see from, if you watch any of the other Universal Soldier films, I imagine, you know, those soldiers were like, you know, revived soldiers from Iraq wars and stuff like that. But that's be like a unique thing. It's like, not even maybe just in terms of soldiers from military, but revive, you know, various police officers or something like that. You can do a lot with this, but I'm not sure if, you know, don't know what's up. Maybe Hollywood don't see like Universal Soldier as like a viable franchise the same degree as like Terminator or Jurassic Park. So they work with little budget and whoever director that wants to do something with, and it always turns out to be like direct to DVD or direct to streaming kind of thing. Not much budget and not much like reverence or love. I can't recall the last time somebody saying like, "Oh, dude, you gotta see this latest Universal Soldier movie. It's like, there's so much like going on. It's like the next John Wick, blah blah blah." You don't really get none of that with this franchise. Anyway, Scott then ignores orders and shoots the cameraman, and Luke snaps and just attacks Scott and just on instinct grab Veronica because he just sees the image of like those two people that he failed in Vietnam, and he's like, I gotta save this one. That's what he's going by on instinct, because it turns out the problem with Luke was that they come to realize the revived Unisouls, if they don't get this particular formula injected into them, that suppresses their minds and willpower, also allows them to be susceptible to orders, but also keeps at bay any remnants of their personality and former life, except, which is something they could not get over this particular hurdle, except the fact that the last emotion or memory, that part is, because it's at its highest upon the time of death, it is uniquely the one that's always rearing its ugly head, which they trying to desperately get over by periodically providing the Unisouls with this serum. So Luke and Veronica get away, while we see Scott slowly starting to get back to his faculties by uttering the word traitor. So the colonel, and a couple of soldiers and the Universal soldiers and the scientists utilizing this lab semi truck, and track these guys down because it's a tracker inside Luke. And Veronica is kind of like, beside herself. She doesn't know what's going on. It's wild. Like, who are you people? And it ran out of gas, and then she sees Luke pushing this car up to 30 miles an hour by pushing this thing, which she doesn't think somebody should be able to do by themselves. So they go to the nearest motel to try to get gas, and they stop in a room and try to call for help, but Colonel Perry orders the Unisouls to knock down like the cell, or at least the telephone towers, so they can call out for help. Then Veronica notices, in a hilarious moment where Luke just walks out bare naked, and he asks for ice. So he's laying in the bathtub covered in a bunch of ice, and it turns out that Unisouls constantly need technically rest via a cooling system, because unlike normal humans, alive humans that can automatically cool down, these Unisouls tend to overheat. So every once in a while, in order to kind of recharge, in a sense, is to cool down the body. Uh, so the Unisols track them down, shooting up the whole, like the motel, but they manage to sneak away to a diner area. And honestly, man, you ever watch a film and you see like certain foods that and the characters are eating, you really want that plate too. And you see, Luke, who probably haven't really eaten real food in a long time, is actually enjoying like a little, like, I don't know, it's meatloaf or steak with like potatoes and like greens or something like that. It's like a massive plate of like a good hearty meal, and he's just watching this older dude eating, and he's just copying him. And it's not even just that plate of food. He's just like eating up wherever he can. He's just like I imagine he has not eaten since he was revived, and he just never thought about it. But then it's like certain things are coming back to him. It's like, I like food. I want to use food to sustain myself. I like it. But then, because Veronica stepped out to try to use the phone to call her editor and try to get more information, because well, I kind of skipped ahead. They end up taking out the tracker of Luke and switching clothes with this gas station guy. And they trick the colonel and the Unisols into thinking that they're inside the gas station area. They hide in a couple of cars that's left on the side in the trunks with a bunch of ice just to hide their body heat, because they can Unisols can track people's body heats, kind of like the Predator. And they sneak inside their semi truck, gather some paperwork to get some information, then drive away. And Scott tried to, he sneak in the back of the car, tries to use a garrote wire to choke Luke, but they crash and, Scott falls out the car, and then they end up driving away. That's when like Scott fully comes back and shoots the colonel. Is like, my name is Sergeant Andrew Scott. And it's like, God, I like that way he just delivers that line. And he shoots, a couple of scientists, but one black guy that kind of looks like a discount Chris Rock, and one older white scientist. And now leading these remaining Unisols in order to, as his own little platoon, in order to track down Luke, as he sees as a traitor and he needs to be dealt with. And he hasn't trying to track him down, and he come across this kind of like cowboy bar, and then trying to get leads, intimidating everybody, and just like, man, he's just really, it's a good actor, man. We all like looked at Van Damme and we all just kind of hyper focused on Van Damme, but we need to give more love to Dolph Lundgren, because like he is really good in this, and he just like, and his combat fight scenes is like really good too, where he is standing there, arms in the back of cross around his back, and it just stands in attention, because he just I'm pretty sure he went through a lot of training and and knows how to carry himself as like a soldier would. So he stands at attention with authority, head held high, and speaks with authority. And it's like, I'm looking for blase 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 and a woman. They was driving a yellow vehicle, and of course they give him shit, and then he just, without moving much, he does this, not a roundhouse kick, but just one kick each towards three other dudes, and it's like bam, 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 and it's like, and he walks up to a smaller dude. It's like, I will say again, I'm looking for this guy driving this yellow car. And then next time we see him, he's like, because the unisols he have left are like needing a cooling system, because the couple of scientists that was left, the black guy, who I don't know why he volunteered for this, but the white guy who because these guys need rest and cooling systems to keep them going, and it's like, it's time for you to do your thing, sir. And it's like, of course he goes in there, and the black guy asks like, why would you tell him that? But he figures like, oh well, we can overdose him with the serum and completely deal with him in that way. So the black guy volunteers to like inject him, and then he gets killed in the process of trying to take him out. But then the once Andrew makes the stuff at that cowboy bar, the remaining scientists ask one of the soldiers, because they take direction very literally. He gets one of the grenades, orders the unisol's like, are you Andrew Scott gave an order. He wants you to hold this grenade for 30 seconds and then let go. And then just like, kudos to this particular actor. He just like quickly holds up his hand open, and then as the scientist pulls a pin and places it, because he tends to blow up this entire thing, extremely limiting the resources for Scott. But the guy grips not only the grenade but the guy's entire hand, and he's not letting go, and the whole place blows up. And so the few remaining unisols had to be taken to the nearest grocery store with like the freezer in the background, and like Scott is just losing his mind. It's like, and all the shoppers are just freaking out about this guy. He's like, I'm losing my entire platoon. Like, I'm dealing with traitors, enemies everywhere. And he's just like having this big old rant. It's a pretty good rant. And then there's like, officers showing up at the scene without any type of tactical like know-how. They just bum rush in like idiots, honestly. And Scott just expertly shoots them down one by one as they, coming around the corner. Like, and he just sees like, see, they're everywhere. And it's like, honestly, it was like a standout moment for me. He's a really good actor, man. And because as a kid, it's like you just looking at the action, you don't really pay attention to like the depths of the role and the performances. And I'm now older, I can just like, my brain just immediately not only can focus on the action and enjoy it, but also the subtleties of the performances at the same time. So then, we get a classic bar fight scene with Luke and a bunch of, patrons, because the guy doesn't have any money. Don't know why Veronica didn't leave or come back quickly, with, to pay for all this kind of stuff. But, the chef comes out from the back. Is like, how do you tend to pay for this? It's like, I don't know. I just like like the food is good. Yeah, I know it's good. How you gonna pay for this? And it's like, I don't know. Please, I don't want to hurt you. I just want to eat. And of course, he gets attacked by the chef and a bunch of other dudes in the little diner. And of course, you get a classic bar fight scene. And of course, they have no chance against Jean-Claude Van Damme. Honestly, he kicks all their asses while eating a sandwich and eating some popcorn. And of course, he throws one guy out the window, and Veronica just see him just sitting there and a happy ass smile on his face. But then they end up finding information about this particular doctor, played by a guy who was on Law and Order back in the day. I think he long since passed away. Jerry Orbach as Dr. Grieger, who performed the operation on Luke Devereaux after he was taken from Vietnam in order to be prepped for the unisol program. And you get more information about this off the books operation that it was meant to help the government in order to lower the use of drafting young men into an army and going through like potential death and psychological trauma or missing limbs, all this other negative stuff and outcomes from wars. They can just essentially recycle former soldiers back into combat. But the problem is with the overheating and like the repressed psychological trauma that will probably pop up at some point. There's still a couple of hiccups they haven't perfected, which we see come to fruition with Scott and Luke. So he mentions that Luke's final moments before he died was his need to just go home. So that's what was driving him. So it's been years, so now he really wanted to go see his family in Louisiana. Because all of this started from Texas, so that's where the whole long road trip adventures, was all about. So they managed to get arrested after Luke tries to get Veronica just to go home because she did her part, but he doesn't want to involve her any further and cause her harm. But she sticks around. They end up in a police convoy where Scott, with one last unisol, attempting to stop the convoy and kill them. And dude's playing around tossing grenades, and Veronica, takes one and throws it back. So she's not completely useless, but it's kind of funny is she just, instinctively knows like, okay, I gotta grab this, toss it right back out the window, and it's blowing up right outside the vehicle. As Luke's trying to drive this thing, he ends up kicking Veronica out to save her while he allows Scott to push not only his vehicle, but he takes out the last unisol that was driving, and Scott, his vehicle and Luke's vehicle go toppling over the edge of a cliff while Luke jumps to safety. So seemingly Scott is dealt with while Luke and Veronica visit Luke's home and he reunites with his parents that thought he long since died. And while Veronica gets ready to go and get back to her station to report all this, Scott shows back up, holds Veronica and the parents hostage while him and Luke duke it out. And Luke tries to tell him like the war is over, you don't have to do this. And of course Scott is completely off the deep end. He just completely lost his mind. He just still trying to give Luke orders. And while he's fighting him, he seemingly kills Veronica in the same fashion with the grenade like he did with the Vietnamese woman back in the day. And so Luke goes ham, takes the muscle enhancers that uh, Scott has been using to double his strength. That's what they used for the unisols to make them, physically superior and faster. Luke injects himself with it and takes on Scott. Kicks him into this hay baler thing that rips him up and spits him out into chunks, finally eliminating him. And he sees that Veronica managed to run farther enough to avoid severe damage from that grenade. I'm shocked that she didn't get hit by any kind of frag. But because at first I was wondering, like, how is it that this Vietnamese woman couldn't escape from that grenade the same way Veronica did? But then I thought maybe, well, no, because I thought maybe like because the Vietnamese woman stopped to cry and freak out, and then she starts running as soon as Luke screamed to her to run. But then it's like Veronica almost did the exact same thing, but maybe there was the seconds difference of them waiting before they start running away was longer for the Vietnamese woman than it was for Veronica. So she instantly starts running, so giving her a lot more time to get further ahead from any severe damage. But she definitely would have gotten a concussion at the very least, but not dead. But that's where the movie ends. With police and camera crew showing up and everything like that. There turns out to have been like an alternate ending where the parents didn't turn out to be Luke's parents, where it's like pretending to be parents. Like, what was the situation was? Because it sounds stupid, so I'm glad they didn't go with this alternate ending, because it was on some kind of special DVD edition. Which starts shortly after Scott takes Devereaux's family and Robert's hostage. As Devereaux grabs a shotgun in the kitchen, the front door opens and he sees his mother at the door before Scott shoots her to death. In the final fight between Devereaux and Scott, Devereaux does not use Scott's muscle enhancers. Shortly after grinding Scott to death, Devereaux is shot by his father before Dr. Gregor and his men appear. Gregor explains that he used Devereaux to entrap both Scott and him, and that Devereaux was staying with people posing as his parents. He then has his men shoot Devereaux before Devereaux dies. The police and Robert's crew arrive. The news crew douses Devereaux with a fire extinguisher to stabilize him, while Dr. Gregor and his men are arrested. Roberts is given the microphone to cover the arrest, but she loses all composure while on air, dropping the microphone to comfort Devereaux. Several days later, Devereaux is reunited with his real parents. The film ends with a eulogy narrated by Roberts, who explains that Devereaux rejected all life-prolonging medication before dying a natural death. So, yeah, it was, I don't like this particular ending, so I'm glad they didn't go with that at the theatrical release. Looks like it was marketed at the 1992 Cannes Film Festival. Van Damme and Lundgren were involved in a verbal altercation that almost turned physical when both men pushed each other, only to be separated. On his website, Lundgren confirmed that it was just a publicity stunt to promote the film. It was the last film that used the multi-channel surround sound format, cinema digital sound. So nice little fun behind the scenes thing, because we have a scene like Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren in a film together for a while, until I think it was The Expendables 2, where Van Damme plays a villain for the first time I ever seen him play a villain before. I'm pretty sure it is like The Expendables 2. Uh, yeah, it was Expendables too, and he's playing. Get this, the name Jean Villon. That was that was like a funny name. And it was Jean-Claude Van Damme's first widely released film since 1999. That is wild. And speaking of 1999, the next film I'll be reviewing is Universal Soldier: The Return, which was released in theaters in 1999, at least from what I remember. Uh, so that'll be a fun film to review because I remember watching this on uh, the sequel on DVD a lot as a kid. Uh, and I think it was like my first introduction to Michael J. White before the Spawn movie. But I think Spawn movie kind of solidified Michael J. White as an A-list actor, or at least a very recognizable actor in pop culture. But yeah, that was Universal Soldier. Yeah, it's an iconic film. I think like the sequels weren't, you know, I mean, you don't expect much from the first movie, but I think it solidified, like an iconic role that's particularly unique for Jean-Claude Van Damme above any other movie that he ever starred in, outside maybe Bloodsport and Time Cop. But Luke Devereaux was uniquely his thing. Uh, but I think the female co-lead was fine, but not really a big standout. I think like outside of Van Damme, I think like Dolph Lundgren's performance is like honestly revisiting this film all these years. He was like the major standout. Just like a fun action flick, but man, he plays great villains, man. And we all, like I said, remember Ivan Drago, but I think we all sleeping on Andrew Scott, honestly. And he did come back as a clone of Andrew Scott at I think it was Reckoning or it was a Universal Soldier Regeneration where Scott was cloned and revised, and it's just kind of like a rematch essentially between Devereaux and Scott. Anyway, highly recommend you guys just check out Universal Soldier, the first film, and let me know what you guys think. But this is just like a fun flick. I will see you guys in a little bit. Don't forget to follow me on links in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.